Joining us now, James Czerniawski, head of emerging tech at the Consumer Choice Center, to answer that question and many more for us. James, great to have you back on the show here. How significant is the lifting of these restrictions for Anthropic, and does it potentially affect the timing of the IPO?
Thanks for having me, Marley. I think that ultimately having these restrictions lifted for Anthropic on Mythos and Fable is a net positive for the company. They want to certainly have users having access to these advanced models, and certainly on the foreign stage, where if you're a company that's trying to justify hopefully IPOing with $1 trillion valuation, you do need to have more than just US-based customers in your disposal here. So ultimately having those restrictions lifted with those new added safeguards in place is a net positive for the company. We still don't necessarily know when Anthropic is going to time its release. A lot of reports have suggested that they might be timing late in 2026, though we have heard reporting of their competitor OpenAI pushing back their IPO to 2027 most likely. So it remains to be seen, but definitely a positive development for for Anthropic to have these restrictions lifted.
So as we look at these two AI mega companies, and we have this conversation, who's going to come first and when's it going to be? I mean, what ultimately will determine the timing here, James? I mean, what matters most? They've got a little bit of a playbook from SpaceX. You could argue Cerebras could be used also to look for some examples here of what to do and not to do. What's really going to determine when and how they come to market?
Yeah, I think ultimately their determination for when they're going to decide to IPO is how they feel about the underlying market conditions in of itself. For OpenAI, I think they're targeting 2027 because they think that might be more favorable for them. And in the meantime, that gives them more of a runway to continue building up the fundamentals as to why people should go and invest in them, whether that's by acquiring more users, showing more growth in ad generation through their advertising section that they're trying to build out too, or through more commercial kind of deals that they're having highlighted out. You mentioned SpaceX out there. Even SpaceX, they're a space company shooting up rockets, but they're also doing AI as well. They had an infrastructure deal that they just did with Cursor for $60 billion. That's because they wanted access to their coding tools and they wanted access to their computing resources. On the flip side, they also went and had a deal with Reflection AI, which is to go and let them use their Colossus data center in Memphis in order to go and use that tool, right? So AI is very much at the front of mind for people. I think when it comes to these companies and their timing, it's all about what do they think is in the future here? How are they going to go and continue acquiring more international users in the scheme of things? And that will probably drive their decisions to IPO.
And James, when we talk about AI, I mean, it's really just become a conversation about these two names. When we look at generative AI, do you view this really as a two-horse race with sort of SpaceX off here on the side as a potential, runaway horse that pops into the race? Or are investors really underappreciating that the competitive landscape is broader than that?
The competitive landscape is definitely a lot broader than just these two companies. Now, make no mistake, OpenAI, Anthropic, these companies are killing it in their own right. They are, basically doing a phenomenal job with increasing their revenue run rate year over year. I mean, if you're looking at it, it's truly an incredible feat. But they're also burning a lot of capital. And by comparison, you cannot ignore the competitive pressure that's being put on these companies by open source models. Like I said, Reflection AI, that particular company, it's an open source model. And we have yet to go and see what their final product looks like. But on the international stage, it's impossible to ignore that you have the Chinese that have open source models like DeepSeek that are going and also competing with these companies. So if they truly do want to take the edge here, they do have to go and respect the fact that they do have other competition coming in through the open source community. Anthropic's Dario Amodei wants to try and warn us about what's happening in OpenAI's, rather not with OpenAI, with open source AI's trajectory here. But that technology is going to continue to develop, which means that they have to be cognizant and compete against it.
And you mentioned the impressive revenue growth that we've seen. I mean, Anthropic's expected revenue run rate has exploded over the past year. At what point is revenue growth not going to be enough here, and we're going to see investors start demanding evidence of sustained profitability? I mean, where does that come in the journey? Likely not before the IPO, but how soon after that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marley, because even when we're looking at their competitor in OpenAI, their potential look at getting profitable isn't even going to hit until 2030, right? So that's still a ways away. And in the meantime, both Anthropic and OpenAI are burning through billions of dollars like it's tip money. I wish I had that tip, but needless to say, they are going and blowing a lot of money in trying to keep up with this. While, again, they are getting a lot of revenue growth here, it doesn't change the fact that they do need to figure out how to get those costs under control while expanding their user base and finding new ways of getting in more revenue for the company, right? So at the end of the day, it's critical for these companies to not take what they have for granted, continue investing in their product, but figure out how to get those costs under control.
And last question here, James, do you think that there is a benefit to coming first here? And I mean, I don't even want to call it an IPO race, but is there a benefit in being the first one to market in these AI names? Or is there perhaps more of a benefit of getting to watch the other go and be the secondary?
I think that you can make an argument either way. Being first, you always have that first mover advantage. You'll have a lot of excitement around your IPO. Certainly, when Anthropic was looking at earlier valuations, they were already at or near that $1 trillion valuation. So if they hit it, there's a lot of added energy around that. We already saw that with the SpaceX IPO. It went from being over $1 trillion to over $2 trillion in a short period of time. So I think that there's definitely a lot of benefits there. But at the same time, if those numbers that you were mentioning about, as we get more insight into how exactly they're performing, are not coming up to snuff for what investors are looking for, when that second mover comes in, whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic, they might actually have a lane here to go and actually grow a lot better as a result of it.
James, always great to have you on. Really appreciate you joining us to take a closer look at what these companies have in store for us potentially. And I'm sure this is a conversation we'll continue having as we wait to hear more concrete timing on these IPOs. But thanks again for being with us. I hope you have a great holiday weekend.